What's up, North America? I'm Dave DeBaugh, and welcome to the Underrated Pod. On today's show, we ask the question, do the Indiana Fever have a Christy Sides problem? That is today's topic. Now, the internet certainly went nuts the other night after Christy Sides and the Indiana Fever won a game. They won a game by 9 points at home against the Phoenix Mercury. 95-86 was the final, but the story that everybody gleamed onto was the fact that they gave up, or nearly gave up, a 31-point lead in the fourth quarter. Now, I watched this entire game, and I can tell you exactly what happened. And I can also tell you whether or not Christy Sides actually had coaching malpractice. That was one of my favorite lines that I actually saw pop up as a result of last night's game. All right, before we get into all of that, let's play some video from the post-game press conference. Here's Christy Sides herself.
Three players with 20-plus points, and then also three players who had double-doubles. When you have that type of production from four different players, what does that say about the kind of well-roundedness of this team?
I mean, right now, I mean, that's incredible, and that just shows like what we're capable of. For me right now, it's giving up 36 points in 11 minutes. So that's what we've got to figure out. You know, I haven't been here when we've been up 31 points. And when you do that, you have to figure out a way to hold that and just finish the game. And so that is where, as a coach, that's where I'm at. But it's incredible, you know, to have players that can put up those many points and be able to rebound the basketball. That, you know, that's where I'm at.
So that was Christy Sides, and, you know, I have to say, you know, one of the big problems with Christy Sides as a head coach of this Indiana Fever team is her inability to not throw her own players under the bus. I mean, she does it on a regular basis. Sometimes it's directly, sometimes it's indirectly. That was sort of an example of an indirect shot at her actual players. The truth of the matter is what happened in the game yesterday, or I should say last night, was pretty simple. When the fourth quarter started, the Phoenix Mercury absolutely took advantage of the Indiana Fever zone that they were attempting to run, to the point where Christy Sides should have called a timeout and actually made the appropriate adjustments. Look, basketball, or at least the modern era of basketball, both in the college ranks as well as the NBA, and certainly we see this in the WNBA now as well, is simply to say what used to be a safe lead never seems to be safe anymore. And the reason for that is adjustments by good coaches in the respective leagues that they actually play in. That certainly occurred with the Phoenix Mercury, who, by the way, were just extremely short-handed last night. I mean, Taurasi didn't play, Cloud was out, Sutton was out, Osborne was out, and then, of course, during the game, Brittany Griner ended up getting hurt and didn't play for the majority of the game. This was clearly an opportunity for a young Indiana Fever team to win the game, which they ended up doing. The big issue, though, was Kalia Cooper, who scored 20 points in the fourth quarter. Now, go back and watch the game. And then while you're watching the fourth quarter of this particular game, pretend you are Christy Sides, the head coach of the Indiana Fever. What kind of adjustments would you make to actually solve the problem of this particular comeback as it was actually happening? Now, the Fever did end up winning. The Fever had three players with over 20 points. We're going to play a little bit more Christy Sides video for you. The first video is her talking about Kelsey Mitchell, and the second video is her talking about Caitlin Clark.
So much of the buzz surrounding this team, but for Kelsey to consistently go out there and score like she does and play at such a high level, what do you just have to say about her effort and her production this year?
Kelsey is one of the most dynamic guards in this league, one of the best guards in this league. She is playing so efficient right now. with the players that are around her. She comes in she is a professional basketball player and does her job every day. Really proud of her consistency and what she's done for us. But yeah, just a dynamic guard that can get downhill, create, and then finish at the rim, kick to shooters. She just collapses the defense.
Matt the Chloe.
Yeah, Caitlin had another 13 assists tonight. It just seemed like she was making some really remarkable passes. Did you notice maybe a step up or more dynamic passes, just improvement from that aspect of her game? Yeah, Caitlin had another 13 assists tonight. It just seemed like she was making some really remarkable passes. Did you notice maybe a step up or more dynamic passes, just improvement from that aspect of her game?
Yeah, I don't know if it's more dynamic or more. I think she just does what she does. I mean, she's got the ability to draw, several defenders, and she has got a crazy eye for her teammates and where they are and moving and able to make passes that some people, in the first half, my gosh, she dropped 2 down to some post players. I don't know who could have made that pass. I mean, that's just what she's capable of.
So what Christy Sides has actually gotten better at throughout the season is actually giving some roses, if you will, to her players when they actually play well. Look, Kelsey Mitchell is a hell of addition to this particular team. Without Kelsey Mitchell on this team, I don't think the Fever would be exactly where they're at right now, which is 10 wins and 14 losses. They head up to Minnesota on Sunday and have an extremely tough matchup with the Minnesota Lynx, and then they finish off this portion of the season in Dallas against the Wings. Kelsey Mitchell certainly been a key component, and it's good to see Christy Sides actually point out the positives that she has on her team. I mean, she talked about Caitlin Clark's passing ability, and I think Caitlin Clark's passing ability as a player in the WNBA is often overshadowed by her ability to shoot the three. Caitlin Clark is a true point guard, and so many people out there who are just casual fans, quite frankly, don't really understand what that is. Watch Caitlin Clark. She's an absolute general on the basketball court. It's also one of the reasons she's not scoring or averaging more points per game than she currently is, just under 17 points per game. So big victory for the Fever last night. One more snippet from last night's post-game press conference. I'm going to go and play this and back with some final thoughts.
Yeah, we're just constantly trying to get better. That's our goal. As a young team in this league, the goal is just to get better. And to when you do things like what we just talked about with letting them score 36 points, we got to figure out how to not let that happen. I mean, we haven't been in this position where we were up 31, but you can't let that kind of lead go. Especially, they cut it to 6. I mean, that's just unacceptable. So we have to figure out how that happened and not let that happen again.
So the question at the start of this particular show today was, do the Indiana Fever have a Christy Sides problem? And I tell you what, after watching the entire press conference, Christy Sides has certainly done a better job in the last couple weeks of singing the praises, at least of a couple of her players. The other thing she has not really gotten good at doing yet is actually taking full, not just partial, but full accountability for losses and meltdowns. And in this particular case, coaching malpractice, I'm not sure that is what I would say, but she probably should have taken more heat for the actual fallout from this particular game. I mean, she basically sat there and made very few adjustments in the fourth quarter to actually solve the problem of Kalia Cooper. Once again, if you go back and watch the game, you'll see that Kalia Cooper certainly was the main issue that the Indiana Fever could not figure out how to stop on the defensive side of the fence. In terms of, do the Indiana Fever have a larger Christy Sides problem? And I think what's fair to do at this point is let the season ride out as it is. Look, Michael Jordan's first coach wasn't Michael Jordan's last coach, and certainly wasn't Michael Jordan's best coach. you can say that about a lot of great players in the respective WNBA and NBA leagues. Certainly, I think at some point, the Indiana Fever organization, who is reluctant for whatever reasons to move off of Christy Sides, will need to take a serious look in the mirror and ask the question, is Christy Sides the right coach for this team to actually take them ultimately someday to the promised land? I think if they're being objective with themselves, they'll conclude at the end of the season that maybe Christy Sides has done a good enough job to garner another year as a head coach. But if they look at the long-term outcomes of this particular Indiana Fever team and the immense talent that Caitlin Clark actually has, I would suspect that most people, including myself, if I were in their organization, would actually probably be looking to make a change at head coach. All right, that is it for today's Underrated. I want to hear from you, North America. What do you think about the Christy Sides problem? Do the Indiana Fever really have a Christy Sides problem? All right, for the Underrated, I am Dave DeBaugh, wishing you all a tremendous rest of your sports viewing day. To the guitar riffs we go.
You've been listening to the Underrated Podcast with Dave DeBaugh, presented by underrated.media.